Welcome back to the basement. We're almost done. A couple more episodes still to go. Today's episode, we're talking about sewing. Specifically for this guy, be the both the tabard and the cape. Not a whole lot of sewing going on here, but we're still going to talk about it anyway. All right. Okay, so we're going to have to go back in time just a little bit. The shields that I had made for the tabard, we'd already covered them in full, but here I had to make all the clips, all the attachments and stuff on the chest piece, both for the tabard and for the cape. Started with the tabard first. We'll cover the tabard first. I took the shields, placed them up on the chest, and got them as close to what I could see on the figure as to where I wanted them. And I traced them out, tried to find a good center line on them, and pulled out my basket of thread and buckles and clips. I tend to have baskets of all kinds of stuff in our little storeroom back here. Once I found where I wanted everything to kind of be clipped at, I marked it up, started carving out holes in the chest where I wanted that clip to fit in. And what I ended up doing, I took some nylon thread, just ran it through the clip, and then ran the threading back into the body, split it up and down, and then glued on the inside. That way it had a ton of reinforcement, and once I had pulled it through on the top, I glued it a little bit on the outside as well, just to make sure that that was going nowhere. I did this on all points, both front and back, just trying to find good points, both referencing the figure for where things could mount here, plus what would kind of hold everything in its shape and position. And then did the same thing for the back. Once I found a good decent spot for everything, carved out a hole for all that, ran my clip through with the nylon thread through it, and then hot glued it from the inside. The ones on the top shoulders were a little bit of a pain to do because that's where I had already put my layers of thick foam to raise the body up several inches. So I kind of had to cut through all of that to get the nylon threads through. It was not a nightmare, but it was just tedious. And then for the other half, these were all going to be sewn to the tabard, to the cape. So I took some more nylon thread, measured out a decent length, and then wrapped them around each individual clip, and then just started sewing the crap out of all of them. That way the idea then would be, come time to sew them on, I could just undo the clip. That end has the strap and everything on it, just sew that on, yeah. But we'll get to that. Yep, and here you can kind of see me trying to feed in the one side, just gluing that in all in from the inside. That bottom center one was a little bit of a pain because I could only access it through the holes that I had made for the attachments for the backpack. So there was a lot of guesswork in getting that in. For the shoulder pieces, I also took some more foam, and after I'd glued everything in, I kind of took more foam for all the giant hole that I'd cut out and kind of refilled it. That probably wasn't necessary. I could have just done the rest with hot glue, but I think I'd cut the pieces already out and I was just putting them back in. So now once all the clips were in position, came time to start mocking up how I wanted the tabard to fit to the chest. I believe this fabric was some kind of, oh no, Sable's at it again. I believe this fabric was some kind of linen. It had a very low thread count. It looked very old, like old school. It was also kind of thick, which is exactly what I was going for. I was looking for something that was very thick, and it also looked very old because, being Templars, and it just, something about it gave me the feeling that this needs to be thick and old, especially looking at this. I mean, I could have gone with something more leathery, but the Templar thing made me think of, okay, something biblical, we need our finest linen, that kind of thing, which is what I was looking for, and it's what I found. The cape material is also the same thing, both the white and red fabric. It's both linen, it's both a very low thread count, and it's also very thick. So what I ended up doing, I clipped it to the actual clips. And then I had marked out the center cutout for the gorget on the neck. Once I had that all kind of figured out, took out my measuring stick and kind of made sure that everything was even, and if it wasn't, I kind of tried to center it up some, made the numbers match a little bit. And then I got an idea of how wide I wanted the whole thing, and then cut down the excess on the sides. In hindsight, I should have kept it wider, because yeah, if you look at this guy here, you see all the bunched up like fabric in the center? I didn't achieve that because I cut everything exactly to size, as you see back there. This will get fixed later. I'm gonna remaking this whole thing at some point. What I should have done was kept it to that length and then brought it in, and that excess would then pop. That was my bad, but I was in a rush. We're getting close to Con Crunch, and that'll be in the next 1 or 2 episodes. The Nightmare. Let's work the hype up for that one. So anyway, once I had everything all marked up in the center, I cut it out and then started pinning it together. I guess I should have also mentioned that this is 2 layers. I went 2 layers because I wanted something bulky, and I was going to sew them together at the very top and then just let it all drape below. That would give it a little bit extra thickness, and the idea was that it would then add some of that extra bulk in the folds. It didn't happen, not because I didn't have the 2 layers, but because I cut it so narrow. So once I had everything pinned, I took it over to the sewing station I have over here, and went to town just sewing the very top, just from corner to corner down the center, just the very, very top. And once I had the whole top sewn, I took the whole thing, flipped it inside out, and inverted the whole thing, and then repinned that side that I had sewn and sewed it again. I don't know why. I think I just did it just for extra security to make sure that it never comes apart. Most of this is never going to be seen anyway, but I think it's like an old sewing thing that I learned from home ec class in middle school, which was like over 20 years ago. I don't know. But once I had that all done, I took it back over to the body piece and put it up against where I wanted it, and then pinned it again to the clips that were already attached to the body. This would have been the nylon strips on the ends of the clips. Once they were all pinned in, I undid the clips and I took them back over to the sewing station and sewed those on. And once I had the clips sewn on, I put it back in the body, and that's when I realized that the corners were going to droop. This wasn't a huge problem. I don't think I show it, but this was where I sewed on Velcro to both the inner and outer pieces of the tabard in the top corner, and that way the if I wasn't plugged in, I'd go over and get it. But yes, the shoulder shields are just Velcroed to the tabard, so those will pop off, and on the other side, underneath on that corner, is also another piece of Velcro, and that's attached to the body. So that entire corner of the tabard is Velcro, both top and bottom, and it's attached to the body, tabard, shields. So now with the tabard pretty much all done and sewn up, came time just to weather it. Again, 2 layers of fabric, so I just took my cutting wheel, cut the crap out of the bottom, and then started like pulling up the first half, cut it some more, put it back down, cut it some more, everything to just make it like very uneven but also raggedy. And once that was all ripped up, came time to do the staining. Sable enjoyed bothering me like she does right now. Hi, Sable. Oh no, are we rolling on the floor? Is that your belly? Ah, danger belly. Danger belly. No, she's just rolling around at my feet. So anyway, this is an easy process. Anytime doing any kind of staining like this, coffee stains are the way to go. It's a cosplayer's best friend, especially on these kind of things, and you're going for something that looks kind of like dirt and worn. Just coffee stains. How dark your coffee is will determine how dark your stains are. It does dry a lot lighter than what you see, but yeah, I stained both the inside, the outside. I think I stained the inside more than I did the outside, and then just kind of like set that off to the side to dry for the night. Okay, so like I said before, the cape is 2 layers. Let's pop this guy off and rip his backpack off and do a little bit more show and tell, since I can't really tell you about this guy back here because I am not spinning that around. Not for you, not for me. Okay, so this is the cape on the action figure. As you can see, there's a hole in the center because the backpack pretty much hangs off of that. So the mounting hardware for the backpack is there on the back, and then this sandwiches more or less in between the body piece and the backpack. And then you can see it kind of wraps up around the top there. So if we didn't show it before or talk about it beforehand, I have, I believe, 5 points of contact for the cape, just to make it extra super secure, because I was worried if it got snagged on something, I didn't want it to pull off or pull anything off from me or any like that. So I figured if I'm going to snag on something, I want it to put me at a dead stop rather than rip anything off. Or whatever I snagged, screw it, just let it fall over. That's their fault, that's their problem. So we have 2 on each shoulder, 1 or 2 right behind the neck on the inside, and then 1 right underneath the mounting for the backpack. So the process of getting the cape's pattern is a little similar to how I did the Tabard, but a little bit more tedious. So again, I clipped the back piece up against the back of the body, but of course I needed the entire cape to wrap around that hole. So the idea was we'll use that as our starting point, and then everything else after that will follow. So I clipped it up against the body, not to the actual clips on the body, but just around close enough. And then I started cutting out the hole for that center in the back. And the more I started cutting that hole in the center in the back, the more I started pulling the rest of the cape around the chest piece and repositioning where everything was. Because the idea is once that hole's there, I want everything else to wrap snug around the chest piece, or the back of the chest. The back piece, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, and I also kind of safety pinned the very bottom to make sure that I had everything wrapped tight around it, so that that opening is going to be as tight as possible. Which also gives that bottom center a little bit of a fold, which I was hoping that would kind of help me out, but spoilers, it didn't. Then once I got everything tight around there, I cut off excess around the shoulders because that wasn't going to be needed. And while I was at it, I had also safety pinned the clips to the inner cape piece. So once I took everything off, I sewed them first, and yeah. I can't tell, but I might have sewn around the inside of the hole as well. I don't know if I did a fold in sew or just a regular sew, but I think I did something just to help hold that from tearing while I was doing the rest of this. Yeah, it does look like I did. Okay, so anyway, now we're taking this back to the table. Now I'm going to work on the rest of the shape. So I have the entire cape folded in half, and I'm trying to do some numbers to see what's the maximum width I can go with on this cape, because if you look at this and then compare it to him, you can kind of see just how much that cape sticks out. And I really wish this gun would stay in his hand. There we go. Now it's not in his hand anymore. So yeah, even at a wide leg stance, the cape sticks out pretty far. I really wanted to get this, but there was one problem. Well, probably two. There's 2 problems. First problem was to get fabric this wide was going to be an issue. Just trying to find fabric this wide. Issue 2 is because I believe most fabric is usually what I think a yard wide, and then it's overlapped, so it should be, but it's definitely not 6 feet wide. Maybe it's like 1.5 feet, 2 foot. I'm not entirely sure. I want to say 3 feet, but 6 feet, I didn't get that much. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, anyway, whatever the stock was out of the stock roll being wrapped, even unfolded, it still wasn't wide enough for what I wanted. So the most I could do was that. Unfortunately, that caused a second issue as well, which I'll get into in a moment. So I started from what seemed like a good point to start for the actual shoulders of the chest piece, and then I kind of just marked out with marker how far I wanted that to go out to the very ends. Now, I didn't go the entire way out to the end on this, even though it's the same width and thickness as the red fabric, which will be on the outside, because I want that red fabric to wrap around the inner fabric on the outsides when I go to sew it on, which means that it's the outer red fabric is going to have to get wrapped twice. So once and then once more, that way that the sewn inside edge is clean. There's no fiber sticking out or anything like that. The only way to get that is with a double roll. I don't know anything about sewing, so I don't know any terminology. So if I'm saying something that sounds stupid, it's because I am stupid. So anyway, you saw that I was marking the inside fabric, the white fabric, with a marker. That to me doesn't really matter that much, because when I go to run that red fabric over it, it's going to flip over and you're not going to see that after sewing. Plus, I am doing this on what would end up being the inside of that fabric. So that marker is going to be on the inside, which would be more or less in the middle between the two sheets. So it will never be seen. Whatever I was using, I wasn't pressing down real hard. I was just going real light. Or I used to use a very dull, almost dead marker. I didn't press very hard either way, so the ink wasn't going through the fabric. But anyway, once I had that all cut out, I folded it in half and then laid it on a folded piece of red, which would be my outside fabric. And then I cut off an excess of, I want to say it looks like maybe 2 inches. And anywhere there seemed to be any kind of deep bend, I made sure to cut a line through. That way nothing binds up during the sewing process. And then once all that was good to go, came time the insanely long and tedious process. I swear this took like 2 hours of just pinning the entire thing the whole way around. I could have just done one side or something like that and then sewn it or something like that. But no, I did the entire thing, top, bottom, left, right, and the hole, all in one go. Reason being, if I go to sew something, if something starts tugging one way or another, there might be a chance that something might not actually overlap anymore, and I didn't want that, so I wanted to make sure 100% that everything was taken care of. Ended up taking almost the entire little container I had of pins. It used that much. I could have used less. As you see, there's a ton of pins, but I think I had them about 3-4 inches apart. And anywhere it looked like it would start to unravel, that's where I would start putting one. That way I knew for sure that it was going to hold that fold the entire way around. And then once I was all finally done, came time to sew it all. This was a lot less tedious. Red thread, ran it straight through. I don't believe I did a double sew. I think I just did a single because of the double fold. That fold went the entire way into the edge, so I didn't have to worry about doing an inside sew and an outside sew to keep it. I probably could have if I wasn't pressed for time, which I was, because this was getting close to the beginning of Con Crunch, which again is probably going to be its own episode. Con Crunch, the nightmare that just keeps on giving. I hate Con Crunch. Hi Sable, you want up here? You want up here? No? You just want pets? You just wanted to say hi. Okay. Well, hi Sable. Okay. And once all the fun sewing was done, came time to take off all of those pins. Not as tedious as before, but you definitely want to keep a count of them, because I don't want Sable here to find any. You know, Sable's a cool little punk rock cat, but I don't want her having any piercings. And then once I was done, I put it onto the back to get to check everything out, make sure everything was good. Yeah, just like the chest, even though it was clipped on, of course the corners of those pieces were kind of flopping up, and I needed them to stay down. They weren't really going to support anything, but just cosmetically I wanted them to stay down. So I grabbed some extra pieces of Velcro and sewed them both to the inner and outer pieces around the edges of where the clip goes. That way it would clip in, and then the Velcro can then just hold the ends down. And it looks like Sable's giving me a visit. She doesn't like me using the sewing machine, I can say that for sure. And once that was all done, did a little bit of cleanup, taking off some excess threads. and then glued the other half of the Velcro to the body piece. Is this the time when Sable decided she's going to get inside of the chest piece, or she just, yep, she got inside. I gotta say, for having a cat, I'm kind of surprised that she has not chewed at or clawed any of my costumes. That said, she does love to be inside of them though, which makes me think I should make her a costume, which she would probably hate. Which, yeah, let me know if you think that's a good idea. She has one eye. I didn't cause that, by the way, but she came that way when we got her at the shelter. But someone somewhere, either on TikTok or Instagram, asked, hey, is your cat named Guts after Berserk? And I'm like, no, but you mentioned that, and that's actually an interesting idea for a cat costume. So if you want to make her a Guts costume, let me know. Okay, yeah, this was the same time that I did the front Velcros too. I thought I did them earlier, but this is when I did them. I must have did them all in one go. But same thing. I hot glued the one piece to the body, sewed the rest of the tabard. After that came time for a test fit. So put the tabard on, put the cape on, put the arms on, and then I started suiting myself up. Legs, midsection, all that. This wasn't a full test fit. This was just going to be more of a cape test fit. So helmet and backpack I did not wear. Some of this you probably have seen on social media if you follow me anywhere else like Facebook, TikTok, or Instagram. So I will now shut up and go away. Watch the fun stuff. But the test fit looked okay. It turned out all right. That was when I noticed some issues that I did not like how tight the tabard was. I wanted it to be more loose and wrinkly, but I'd had to have gotten more fabric, and I do this all in the middle of the night because I'm a night shift guy. So my time frame to go buy more fabric is very tight. Not to mention this was coming close to the end of the crunch time, and I had a literal laundry list of things that I needed to do. So it was very low on my priority to start going back on things unless I really, really had the time and money. And I did not have the time at all. It was one of those things where I just had to live with it. And it's the same with the belt. Like, to me personally, I think the belt is too thick and too big, even though it is a thick and big belt on him as well. But I could have made it just a little bit thinner, probably. I could have stained it. Yeah, there's a whole laundry list of things now that everything's done that I want to redo, finish, touch up, whatever, which is common with any costume, really. You know, you crunch once you get close to the end of the convention. That's the motivator to get it done, but you're also kind of rushing, so you're letting things go and letting certain things slide and yada yada yada. But everything was good enough. It was time to start painting the cape. So let's see here. Yeah, so the inside, you can see there's a little cross in the corners, and then your lines there. I'm not saying anything super hard to do, but that's what we were making. So I made a small little template, just found the same exact kind of cross on my computer, took a piece of paper, put it up against the screen, got the size I needed, traced it out, or more or less made a paper template. measured out how far away I wanted it. I think it was like 2 inches from the template, like 3 inches from the cross, and taped it down in place, and then just took some red acrylic paint and just filled all that in. It didn't matter too much to me if it bled out a little bit, because I wanted that old school feel, so it would have kind of like an uneven paint job, and it was a little splotchy here and there, which was fine. Once that was done, I did the same exact thing to the other corner. Got it about 3 inches both sides, top and bottom, or bottom and side, taped it down, and then painted it all out. And to make the lines on it easier for me, what I did was I took a roll of painter's tape, a thin roll of painter's tape, and I just ran a piece more or less from end to end of both the crosses, and then I taped around that. Once I was done taping around it, I took that piece that I'd laid down originally out. So more or less I had that thickness of that painter's tape, but outlined. And then, just like I did with the 2 crosses, I painted that down inside the tape. And once it was dry, I pulled the tape off, and we had a nice straight but also kind of like old school splotchy line on the bottom. Now, to do the lines on the sides, I had to take it back over to the big table. Well, they're both the same size table, but that one doesn't have anything on it. And I did the same thing. I took the tape, kind of found I believe it was 3 inches from it, 3 inches from the edge, and just kind of like ran it along to make sure it contoured with the shape of the cape. And then once I had that, traced it around with more tape, and then pulled the middle piece out, and then went to town with it with more red acrylic paint. Made sure when I did all of this that I just laid that paint on as thick as possible, because I wanted it to penetrate. Not so much like it was going to go through it to the other side, but it would be enough that it would penetrate to hold onto the fabric. This is the same thing that I had done with my Terminator Chaplain's tabard and everything else. Then once one side was done, went over, did the other side, same exact thing. All right, and that is the tabard and cape. Surprisingly not a lot to cover, especially after the last episode, which was so long. Nothing else to talk about there. It's fabric, I guess. Coming up next will be painting. Depending on how long that will be, I'll also include Con Crunch, or that will be its own separate episode. So 2 episodes probably to go, give or take. Yeah, and I can't even show the finished product because it's behind the big guy, and right now he's locked in a corner, and like I said, I'm not moving him out for you or for me unless I'm doing some repairs or just moving around the room, because he's a disaster in that corner. Yeah. So anyway, see you in the next one.